Hi guys, it's Ernest from Proximal Consciousness. Got a great subject matter for you guys today. Pre-teenagers. Now, this is one of these subject matters that's great for raising children, raising kids. And it's also great for understanding adults who pretty much have been raised in the same environment, that's coming from the same environment that I'm talking about, or that I'm going to talk about. Now, first of all, human beings have very unique qualities, right? Our senses. And we use our senses to grow, to develop into adults. Our hearing and our eyesight, and our touch, things of that nature. Now, these sort of things are well known to the medical industry. They're well known to most parents. Some parents pay a great deal of attention to these qualities. A small child uses its hearing to hone in on its parents, its surroundings. There are certain things, though, that's very important about a child's surroundings that help it to develop into a healthy adult. Right? How you talk to a baby, to a small child, helps it to feel comfortable. How you encourage them or interact with them helps them to develop confidence. I mean, you want to display a certain temperament, a certain degree of involvement, a certain amount of openness and loving and caringness to very small children, because it helps them to come out of their shell. It helps them to awaken, to become conscious of their surroundings. It encourages them to participate. Right? And you don't want a child to participate in an aggressive, in a demanding, in a violent fashion. So in turn, you don't display those kinds of things to a small child, to a baby, because it will cause them to close off. It'll cause them to be irresponsive to you. They'll turn away and they'll look for interest other than within the parents or the household, which is not a good thing, especially as that baby, that child, continues to grow up into a teenager and then a young adult, an adult. The reason that this subject matter is so important is you have so many preteens, teenagers, adults that show signs of problems that generally emanate from their baby years, their young years. I mean, there are some that's impacted later on in life, but a lot of what happens later in life can be handled better and maybe even avoided if you get it right in those young years. If you develop within that child the proper associations, the proper attachments, the proper confidence, the proper involvements, those qualities, those skills, those desires can help protect that child, that teenager, that young adult, that adult in old age from those kinds of problems, attacks upon their character, upon their personality, upon their spirit, in fact. A lot of what ails society emanates from that kind of thing, right? What a child sees when they're very young, whether it's threatening, whether it's playful or warm, whether it's close or far, whether it's colorful or dark or gloomy or whatever it is, has an impact. What a child hears, whether it's loud and abrupt and seemingly scary, can impact how that child listens. What that child is allowed to touch, whether it's hot and burning, whether it's cold and distant, impacts that child. Right? Impacts that child's comfort, impacts that child's connection with what's around them. I mean, we we want to know how to develop a healthy human being and understanding those pre-teenage years, that pre-teenage development, that pre-teenager journey, whether it's a small baby, whether it's a toddler, whatever it may be, is critical in accomplishing that. Right? I mean, things that we cannot overlook in the development of a decent human being. Hearing a person's voice, a kind, caring person's voice, goes a long way at helping to bring up a decent human being. I mean, there's some people who curse and swear. There's people who yell. There's people who argue and fuss and fight. There's people who are very dismissive. Children that are surrounded by people that just don't listen, that's just non-responsive, and that raises the level of anxiety of a child. That increases the risk that that child will be angry and aggressive, maybe even violent. Children that will turn off from their parents, from their siblings, from their relatives, from distant relatives, from people in general. I mean, helping a small child, a pre-teenager, to feel a part of a group, a family, a society, a community, requires a degree of care, a degree of love, a degree of openness, a degree of concern, a degree of interaction on a healthy level to get a healthy outcome. Anything other than that, society runs the risk of having young children and even adults to feel out of place, to feel unwelcomed, uninvited, to turn to other means of handling what could be handled calmly, rationally, peacefully. Right? I mean, in general, I mean, we some parents want, and some people, even siblings for that matter, some people for whatever reason like overly aggressive teenagers. They get them involved in sports. They get them involved in karate and self-defense, martial arts. I mean, that's all fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But how a child, a young adult, goes into these things, right, will ultimately determine what impact other kids who may not be raised the same, coaches and all this kind of thing, and spectators and so forth, how those people have an impact on a child will be determined. So to what degree those people have impacts in that situation and circumstances all hinges on how that child was raised. It may not always be the best thing to get people and children, pre-teenagers, involved in things that are potentially highly aggressive, highly potentially abusive, somewhat dangerous, if they haven't been properly prepared, filled with the qualities and characteristics that are necessary to handle those kind of situations. Right? Now, on the flip side, you don't necessarily want to be too goo-goo-ish and gaga-ish with your preteens. I mean, you want them to be confident, you want them to be strong, you want them to be loving, but you want them to grow up into maturity. You want them to know that when you need something, when you want something, that the best thing to do is to be able to articulate that clearly, concisely. Right? You want to teach them the importance of hearing, but hearing what is most important about a situation. And that's not always the emotions. That's not always through feelings. Right? You want that proper balance. And it's those people, those parents, those siblings, those family members, whether it's near or far, it's that community, that country for that matter, that learns the proper balance that's necessary to take care of our preteens. Right? That proper interaction, that proper amount of hearing, of seeing, of speaking and doing and touching and so on and so forth is necessary to have a great outcome. Anything less than that, we run the risk of doing it wrong. Now, there's always an opportunity later in life to identify those people who have possibly been subjected to that sort of upbringing. And you might, if they're open to it, that you might be able to make the necessary corrections in their sense of self and to alter their behavior and to encourage them to become more balanced, more healthier communicators, healthier listeners, healthier doers. It's possible. All things are possible, right? But to get it right in the very beginning makes it a lot easier and a lot funner to deal with these people later in life, right? So our pre-teenagers deserve a great deal of attention. Not too much attention, but a great deal of attention, the right kind of attention. I mean, in general, because they're so young and they're so impressionable, they're so vulnerable, they're going to get a lot of the attention that they need. They're going to get a lot of attention in general. But it's important that we become more objective about the kind of attention that we give them. You know? The pros and cons of our interactions with pre-teenagers, other people's pre-teenagers, our pre-teenagers, is important. And we should be mindful of that. When we see pre-teens on television, when we see them in the movies, when we see them in the churches, in the schools, out on the streets, in the neighborhoods, in the homes of the people we're dealing with, in our own homes, it's important to look at them and deal with them accordingly, to monitor their growth trajectories, to monitor the context of their lives in an effort to guarantee that they're getting what they need, when they need it, how they need it, so that they can grow up into what we need them to grow up into. Healthy, balanced, moral, confident, motivated, focused, independent to a certain extent when they need to be, adults. Okay? So I thought this was a great subject matter to touch on. And I'll touch on it again as it relates to older people, because I think it influences everything that we do in this country. Every one of my subscribers and the people out there that are viewing videos and people that are interacting on YouTube, people that I work with, socialize with, have dealt with this on a personal basis in their own lives. And of course, they're dealing with it in their children's lives, and some of them in their parents and siblings and so on. It's a very important issue, and there's no way for us to truly be conscious of our lives, of our existence, if we don't understand all the elements that go into it. Whether it's the moral aspect, whether it's the educational aspect, whether it's the sports aspect, whether it's the home life or the community or the work life of themselves or their parents or those people around them. It is important to be mindful of these things because all of these elements come into play. When we're talking about the subject matters that we cover, it's important to understand that not everybody is in the same place. You know? Not everybody will see it the same. Not everybody will hear it the same. Not everybody will respond to it the same. And understanding that gives us a more conscious approach in dealing with the subject matter and in dealing with the people involved in these subject matters. So that's the thought I had today, you guys. And I hope you guys are liking these subject matters. I hope you're liking my channel. I hope you're subscribing to my channel. And I look forward to having more discussions with you guys in the future. So have a good day, you guys. Bye now.